I'm Curator Allison Sheridan with the University Museums at Iowa State University, and I'd like to welcome you to the biannual program with the Pohlman Fellow. The estate of Lori A. Jacobson established the Lynette L. Pohlman Student Mentoring Scholarship Fund, which supports the Lynette L. Pohlman Museum Fellowship. A consummate museum professional, including museum curator, educator, strategist, and exhibit designer, Lori Jacobson's career was launched through her undergraduate work with Iowa State's own university museums. Recognizing the importance of that experience, Lori chose to name the fellowship for her mentor, University Museum's Director and Chief Curator, Lynette L. Pohlman. The goal of the fellowship is to provide one-on-one mentoring to selected undergraduates to help them develop the knowledge and specialized skills required for continued education or securing a job in the burgeoning and flourishing museum field. Students selected as Pohlman Fellows work closely with professional staff members such as myself, who mentor and introduce them to the other staff, departments, education programs, and functions of the university museums. Fellows participate in the ongoing work of the museum and its departments, compiling projects or a discrete portion of a larger project, and attend regular seminars with staff mentors and others. Today, we have the pleasure to talk with Lori Jacobson's husband and ardent art and museum supporter, Jason Kogan, direct in from LA, and current Pohlman Fellow, Gracia Koele. Welcome to you both. Gracia, please introduce yourself and talk about your current academic studies and past work as an intern with university museums and then Pohlman Fellow since fall 2022.
Yeah, I'm Gracia Koele. I'm a senior here at Iowa State, currently majoring in history with a minor in anthropology. I'm originally from West Des Moines, Iowa, and then I started as an intern with University Museums in spring 2020, so it's been about 3 years now, and I spent most of those first couple years working at with the Art on Campus collection and at the Christian Peterson doing a lot of varied stuff, a lot of collections management stuff, some exhibits set up. I did condition reporting with Art on Campus, cleaning sculptures. And then in fall 2020, I became the Pohlman Fellow. And that first semester, I did a lot of collections management with the Brunier collections. And then that spring semester, I started researching for the exhibit that I'm curating now.
Jason, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background and relationship with university museums?
I've always been interested in art and was introduced to museums as I was growing up in New Haven, Connecticut. That interest continued when I was living in Washington and going to school visiting all the Smithsonian museums and the National Art Gallery in particular in Washington. And that interest continued after I moved to Los Angeles in 1983. While in Los Angeles, on a vacation, I met Lori Jacobson, and we later married. Lori started her career here at Iowa State University, and she became interested in museums. So she became a museum professional for 37 years, and during that time, there was a major focus, not on her life, but in mine, on art and museums. So I became even more interested in museums, and certainly learned about the museum here at Iowa State, which Lori was involved in with several projects during the years. And then after Lori died in January of 2018, I spoke to Lynette Pohlman, who had been Lori's mentor over 40 years earlier, and talked about a way that I would like to honor Lori in a relationship to the museum, which led to when the renovation was completed of the museum, which I supported the naming of the opening gallery in Lori's name, Lori A. Jacobson, but I also became more involved in the museum here, not only because of my interest in art, but I liked the programs, the art, the exhibitions. The director, Lynette, and the staff were just terrific and very much involved in museums. I'm currently a member of 15 museums, most in Los Angeles, but some other places. And I value the museum here for everything they're doing as well as the people, so I continue to be involved and have supported the museum in several ways. One is providing support for acquisitions during the past 4 years, and also I have established an art acquisition fund in Lori's name for the future so the museum could acquire art, because I strongly believe in what the museum here is doing.
I just want to clarify that the front gallery of the Brunier Art Museum is the gallery that is named after Lori Jacobson, and we opened that in 2019. and to much fanfare. I think Lori would have been pleased. But I've seen some pictures of Lori and Lynette in the early days traveling around the world, and so we'll touch on that in just a few minutes about mentorship. Gracia, what's your current project for this semester, and what have you learned from this hands-on project?
Yeah, so currently I'm working on curating an exhibit for the Farmhouse Museum about World's Fairs in the Victorian era, which is totally new for me, so I've basically been learning everything, but I've learned, I think, a lot of value skills like kind of self-management, and I think, especially looking back as to how I started, I've learned how important it is to kind of choose a theme and carry that with you throughout the research and the planning, which is something I'm definitely learning now, yeah.
Well, and I will say that Gracia's very much a self-starter, and as her mentor, I very much appreciate that. She's very independent. So how about any exciting tidbits you've discovered from your research that you can share with us before that exhibit opens in February of 2024?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was thinking about this question. I think a lot of the most interesting stuff I've found are a lot of the kind of smaller human stories about the World's Fair, because when you think of World's Fair, they're like these huge monumental events, so it's kind of easy to miss kind of the people that went, the stories they faced. So a lot of these you get a lot of these from Chicago, 1893, just because it's so iconic and well documented. One of my favorite Iowa-related stories is that the Iowa State Band was actually the first group to take the inaugural ride of the Ferris wheel when it opened in 1893, which is it's just an interesting thing to visualize, if nothing else.
And it was documented in the yearbook for Iowa State that following year. I'm excited to learn all these fun facts along with you.
Yeah.
It's a great time, actually. So what about your exhibition research and curatorial work has really surprised you or maybe stumped you?
I've done research papers for classes, so I have a little bit of experience doing historical research, but I think especially with this and curatorial work, kind of physically realizing the research has been a new experience for me. So trying to take my research and physically manifest it in the objects I choose and the labels I write and how I place them and how I organize the exhibit is something that I'm learning and definitely still learning now as I work through it.
Well, I'm kind of bummed because I'll have to give the curator's talk for the exhibition. You won't be around.
Yeah.
You're actually planning to graduate. But we're currently working diligently, and like I said, that exhibition will open February 2024, the very first part of February. Jason, will you highlight Lori and her professional work in the museum field, and how did it all start for her?
Well, Lori needed, like a lot of students, she needed money to go to school, so she needed a job. So at her second year, it turns out to be opening at the museum. Mm-hmm. So Lori didn't know anything about museums then. It was going to be a job, and Lynette was assistant director. And she fell in love with the museum right away, and in her own words, she was smitten with it. Mm-hmm. And so during the next couple of years, Lynette became sort of her mentor. And it just wasn't, do this work, do that work, but she followed her, helped her, guided her. Lori learned about everything from doing curatorial work to research to collections management, everything that was possible to learn, as well as physical labor, moving things around. So, and she actually stayed on after she graduated for a while because she wanted to work at the museum. So she became very close to Lynette because of Lynette's mentorship, and that experience made all the difference. And then they went on a field trip. They visited in a short time around 100 museums. It was whirlwind, but this was all in the East where they could drive to, and that further cemented her interest. Mm-hmm. So once she graduated, she got an offer right away to be a curator of a museum in Texas on the Rio Grande border, where she was working when I met her. So she eventually moved to Los Angeles, and she started working at the LA County Museum of Art, which is the largest museum there, as an educator. She then left there and was the executive director of the Western Museums Association. There are 9 museum associations around the country for various regions, and there's the National American Alliance of Museums. Mm-hmm. So Lori put on conferences, did a lot of work. And in fact, she was the first one to put on a conference in Hawaii from that group. And of course, I had to tag along and visit Hawaii.
Of course, Hawaii.
Had a great, I learned a lot about Hawaii, the first of many trips to Hawaii. And then Lori decided to go for the for-profit field. Mm-hmm. So there was a small company in Santa Monica which did the museum exhibition work. So she was hired, and she did that for several years. And one of her main projects, where there was a large state museum in Sacramento opening up, and she became the liaison and worked with the contractors and development of the museum. So she met another woman there, and they decided, why don't we just go out on our own? So for 15 years, they had their own firm, and they did their projects mostly over California, but they did a major project in Las Vegas, the Nevada State Museum, which is off the beaten track of the strip there. But it's a fabulous museum, and I remember being at the opening. The governor came and he spoke, and it was a real big deal there. Though a lot of people don't get to see it because you don't gamble at the museum, of course. Although there's a good section on the history of gambling in Nevada. And then after 15 years, they dissolved that. And Lori went on her own, and but so she could, she had an office from home, but she did a lot of projects, consulting, strategizing. But when they were together, with her other partner, the firm they founded, they did from large to small museums, from small exhibitions to somebody had a building, a town, and they wanted a museum. Some of these projects took 2 to 2.5 years. So the work included everything from strategizing, work with the client, locating the objects. They had a staff they didn't hire, but consultants of graphic designers. People did wayfaring. People did lighting, electrical. Because when you're putting together a museum, there's so many aspects to it that you need to bring in all these people, and they had a good group of people, including the people who did the actual work of the structuring inside. So the foundation. So they had a very good firm there. They worked for years, who actually did work for Disney and other major companies. But although these were not as big as that, they still liked doing this work. So their fabricators would, I guess, be the official name for them. So they did, from small to large museums, and the work was fantastic. Of course, I had to go to the openings for all these. And one of the funny things that happened was Lori kept her maiden name, Jacobson. So I was always referred to as Mr. Jacobson and, during these, and I accepted that. But some of the things that Lori did, though, when I talked about various things they did, is that they would not just design the interior. It starts from the beginning, strategic planning. What's the long-term plan? You go through various iterations of that with the client. Then you have to do the graphic people do sort of initial designs. It was a long process. And then you have to look at the objects. You talked about the stakeholders. And then there was always an educational component, because that was really important to what Lori and her partner were doing in education for students as well as the public. So there were always education programs they worked on. They helped develop various programs. So there was a whole range of things they did. And one thing, they didn't raise money for this, but they basically sometimes these nonprofits use the initial drawings, et cetera, certainly to raise money as time went on. So one of the things that I learned is sort of behind the scenes, what happened. So when we walk into a museum exhibition today, it'd say, look, we like the artwork, we like the artist, look the way it's displayed, look at the labels. What we don't see is what went into that. So that is how the work, how many people you have to talk to, how many times you have to go drafts of the label to please the client and basically understand what this painting is about, or the sculpture. So they even, one of their fun ones, there's a dinosaur museum where they actually decided that, it's a fun thing to have for students to replicate what a dinosaur sounded like. So instead of the system, so you press this button and there would be a bellow just like they pictured, a dinosaur would sound. So, but they're always client-oriented. They always worked on the educational materials, and it was not a 9-to-5 job. Lori worked from home a lot of the time, and long hours, and a lot of creative people work at night. So there was long phone calls, long hours, but it wasn't the money as much as that she just loved what she's doing, because people working in museums often don't get paid the same level they do things outside the museums, unfortunately. But people love the work, and she loved it too. So actually at the time of her death, she was working on a couple of projects. So, but that was her life, working on it. But she knew, if you looking at, the files, so there could be one museum, could be 2 boxes of folders of so many letters and information going back and forth. So we just don't realize how much goes into making of a museum.
Well, and I'll caution you, Gracia, as you grow into your career, you're going to start visiting museums, and probably Jason does this now too, by proxy, you start looking at the floor and the lights and the nitty gritty behind it all, because that's truly all those fingerprints that touched every element. Like you said, the art, the sound effect, the smell, the materials that were used. That's truly what makes makes the exhibition whole. And makes it what we do today. And sometimes we get critical of those things, but also don't go into the museum field to make money. It's a passion field.
But to follow up what you said about, but the museum, the labels, whatever it is, has to appeal to everybody. So in other words, it's just, I've seen labels and exhibitions where the focus was on somebody who, to understand it, you might needed a PhD in art history. But the idea is that the way to do it is so everybody understands it, no matter whether you have a high school education, a graduate education, to appeal to everybody. So you understand it and can appreciate it. Everybody obviously could look at a painting and have different views of it, but a painting could stand for so much. Same thing with a sculpture. So it's just how it's presented. Even the painting of the wall behind it can make a difference. The colors, and you go to museums, you see different colors, you see labels of different sizes. So that becomes natural to look at it after you do that for years. It just becomes part of the experience.
Gracia, both Lori Jacobson and Lynette Pohlman, as we've heard, have had long legacies in the museum field. What's your career path or plan after graduating from Iowa State?
Yeah, so I'm planning on graduating at the end of this fall semester. And then,
are you sure you don't want to stay on?
Let's just hope I graduate. But my plan right now is to take a year off, try to maybe find an internship in Des Moines, get some more experience, and then go to grad school. I'm still deciding, but I'm thinking either collections management or maybe archive work. But
you hear that, grad schools? She's going to be up. Poacher. Jason, let's turn back to you. How critical is hands-on experiential learning to the development of future professionals? And did you personally ever have an internship or fellowship?
Well, to answer your second question first, I went to law school. I'm now a retired lawyer. We didn't have internships in the same way. There were what we call a clerkship. You might work for a judge or law firm. It was sort of the equivalent, but not everybody did that. But I worked part-time when I was in law school for a law firm, and made all the difference to see real life, to experience it, dealing with people, not just with books. So I think that makes a great difference for everybody, no matter what field in. But I could tell you a personal experience. So after a few years in law school, I was practicing. I went to George Washington University. I was asked to teach a course. So it was a new course on forensic science, which is also very popular now. So then not many universities had courses in it, but the law school had a course in that during the day, but it was more driven on research and paper, not on live experience. So the professor asked me, since I was practicing, so would you like to develop a course which is more clinical, et cetera? So we did, and because it was Washington, D.C., they had the program, you can go 4 years instead of 3 if you work during the day. So we did this at night. Where I came in, I created the course, and I actually brought in live experts who actually testified in court, not just hear it from me, I could talk about my experience. So I went for 3 years, became a very popular course. But one thing I did was, because I value the idea of internship or clerking, again, the university led up to me. So it was a paper course, so for each the 3 years, the student who had the best paper, I invited to be a clerk with me for a semester. They didn't get paid, but they could follow me around. They come in once a week and see what they do. And basically the feedback was it was a very invaluable experience for them to be in an office, to see how things going, and even or to come and watch me in court. So I think whatever profession is, it's valuable. And certainly museum experience is one, because museum is one area where if you're on hands-on, you're getting experience. That's really important because you can see what's going on there. You don't really get that from visiting a museum. So I think that makes a difference here. And that's also made a big difference for Lori, because Lynette's mentorship really got her in touch with herself and her interest in museums. So in that case, that's important to get her going and start a career. Also something I've done over a year ago is I was wondering how students get interested in museums, and I remember Lori's experience. So I'm very involved with Penn State, where I went to school, and they have a museum, but they're building a much larger museum, which is supposed to open this coming year. So I've been working with them on several things. So one of the things that I came up with, is a way for students to get more engaged in museums. So what I did is, and the university agreed to it, I developed guidelines of program to engage students in museums. So what I set up is a Museum Experience Fund at Penn State, which gives grants 3 times a year, and students apply for it. The university selects the students, and the students have the choice, who get the grant, of visiting 5 museums anywhere in the country. Then they have to have an interview with somebody at the museum, go on tours, et cetera, or they can go to a national or regional conference, or they could get an internship up to the maximum of the grant. So far it's been very successful. I have either met in person or online the students, and one of them, the one I met in person, had some interest, but after visiting museums in this program, has firmly decided on a museum career. So the idea is essentially you're getting paid to go do the stuff to learn, with the idea that you can learn about it, maybe it'll interest you, because that, again, it's the hands-on, but it's a different way than being in the museum. So as far as I know, this is the first and one of the first programs like this, and I hope someday that Iowa State will eventually do something similar.
Well, and I like that it's very much, as Iowa State was founded on a land-grant mission about practical education, that the internship that we have at university museums, the fellowship, what you were just speaking of at Penn State, kind of lifts the curtain or lifts the veil so that students can get the real picture, really touch the objects, really see the work that goes behind, work one-on-one with the staff member to make sure that they're realizing a project, because it may change their mind. They may decide, this is not what I enjoy, and it's better to change your mind at 20 than at 45.
Right.
So having those real life experiences is absolutely critical. Okay, so Gracia, back to you. Have you found value in your internship and fellowship experiences with university museums? And what skills do you see transferring to your planned post-graduation work?
Yeah, I think, kind of as Jason mentioned, the hands-on opportunities that I've been able to get through both my internship and this fellowship are something that I really value, and I can't imagine I would have found anywhere else. So a lot of those skills I will definitely be transferring, and then, generally I feel like my writing skills have improved, my speaking skills. But yeah, I think this specific hands-on stuff has helped me learn about museums, but also helped me gain an opportunity and experience that I will take into the real world.
Well, and I forgot to ask you, how did you get introduced to university museums?
I had a friend who interned here that I knew through church, and she kind of gave me a tour, told me about it. That was the only way that's kind of why I decided to come to Iowa State, and the only way I would have probably found out about university museums. So it was I kind of had an in, but that was how I found out.
Thank you, Sonia. Okay, Jason, mentorship can truly lay the foundation for success in a career. What impact did Lynette Pohlman's early mentorship truly have on Lori?
Well, as I mentioned, that helped start her get on the idea of becoming a professional museum person. So, but the hands-on, which is basically not just going in, telling you we're going to do 3 hours here and there. She actually guided Lori and mentored her in the true sense of the word, which made a big difference. So Lori's idea in establishing the fellowship was she would like somebody to have the same opportunity to have a mentor. So the way it works, as Gracia could tell you, is that when there's a one-on-one experience, so that the person at the museum selected as a mentor follows along and works closely with the recipient of the fellowship. So, and then the whole idea is what Lori wanted is that for that person to, if it appeals to them, to continue their education, in the arts, or even to secure a museum position, which that helps because you're learning about all aspects here. Plus, you early on can work on putting together an exhibition. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a grad student to have prior experience. You're right there. So you have she wanted somebody to have experience, which they wouldn't get otherwise unless they were right there in the museum. Mm-hmm. And so this way you could have a head start when you go to graduate school. You've already had some live experience. Mm-hmm. So this meant a lot to her, to Lori, to have somebody to have the options to start that she did when she was going there. Not, regular internships were good, but she wanted more than that. Mm-hmm. This mentor relationship was the key to what she wanted because that helped her to get going in her career.
Well, and I think she continue to circle back to that mentorship relationship, whether it was through projects with university museums or even Lynette and Lori kind of using each other as sounding boards, kind of mentor-mentee, the roles maybe switched at times, and that level of respect and professionalism is truly kind of unique in that scenario. And I think Lori valued it just as much as Lynette continues to value it. And I did fail to mention, Lori did work on, and my first interaction with her was the larger Campus Beautiful publication, which seemed like a daunting task. It's a tomb of a book.
And it's a multi-year task.
Yes.
And it's a fascinating book about the campus, in color, but in the architecture. And I don't think there's really any comparison, at least I'm aware of any university of that size book and the depth that's gone in and the people contributed to it. So Lori sort of oversaw that. I think it was 2 years or more in the making, but Lori also worked on the Wow Wall at the Student Union. She did the strategic planning with Lynette for the Peterson Museum, and she did other projects there. So she came back because that was, it was part of her background, her life was the connection to university museums. So that's what she did, and so she kept her contacts with Lynette, and she got involved in these projects. So it's all turned out very well, to say the least. So that was always there as part of her, and that's why. When after Lori died, I was talking to Lynette. Lori had such a connection there that I wanted to continue that connection, going forward.
And it's true that a network can be kind of that net that saves you in your career, to have those connections and to build those. So we're currently looking for the next Pohlman Fellow because Gracia says she's going to leave us. Would you recommend the Pohlman Fellowship to other undergrads, Gracia?
I definitely would. And I would say even when I applied, I was a little bit unsure whether I wanted to maybe wait a year or I was kind of encouraged to apply, which I really appreciate because otherwise I might have missed the opportunity. So I would say even if you're unsure, I would say just apply and go for it because I didn't know what I would have missed if I hadn't applied. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to note that the fellowship kind of rotates who the mentor is. And so we do specifically talk with the student that is selected and make sure that we are also meeting their career goals and their curricular needs and things like that. And so it's not just a random, and they're not always assigned to me. The next one, for instance, will cycle out and be assigned to someone else. Okay, so the last question to both Gracia and Jason. How has the Pohlman Fellowship transformed or impacted each of you? Jason, I'll have you go first.
Well, I think it's impacted me because I've seen the results, although we just met today, we've communicated before and I've met the other prior recipients. And like the first one, recipient, Sarah Bartlett, actually is now in a museum position as a curator. And part of what helped her, I believe, you could have asked her, was getting position was her experience here in the fellowship. I think the experience is invaluable, and from the outside looking in, I can see the experience, what they're doing, because I'm familiar with regular internships at other university museums, and this one has aspects which none of the others that I've seen. And plus, even though the museum has other internships, it's not the same as this one. So this one goes beyond that, so it offers the opportunity to do more, and you essentially gain advanced experience. So if you're looking at grad school or competing for a position, you've got a head start on it because you've actually helped curate an exhibition. You've worked in collections. You understand it works, how things work. You understand the research necessary. So, I think from an outsider looks at it, I think it provides very valuable background that could really help somebody get ahead. I guess Gracia will tell us soon, but.
And you're right. Sarah did go on, and then she's just recently become curator, real close to you, just up the state a little bit.
Hundreds of miles away.
Yeah, closer than Iowa. Gracia?
Yeah, I think what I value most is I think the confidence, especially now as I look forward to the future, the confidence that I feel that I can go out into the world knowing that I've had these experiences. I know that I like to do this. This is what I want to do, which coming into college, I I thought maybe I'd want to do museums. I didn't know what that meant, but now I can leave knowing that I know what that means, and I've done some of it before. The ability to say that, yeah, I have curated an exhibit, or I have worked in collections management. That's some of the stuff that I really, really value the most.
All right, final thoughts, either of you, before we wrap this up?
I don't know. I think I said it, yeah.
Well, make sure you all visit her exhibition. It'll open in February
Yes.
at the Farmhouse Museum, and it's about World's Fairs and expositions from, 1851 to 1910-ish.
Yeah.
Is the kind of cutoff date. So it'll be a great exhibition, and there'll be programs associated with it, and we're really excited. Jason, anything from you?
Yeah, I'm excited to see that too, but especially excited to see how far the program in 4 short years has developed, and that following Lori's intent and what she wanted. So I think it's great that the museum is basically following what Lori wanted to do, and not only because Lori wanted to, because it really benefits not only the museum but the university, because the museum is always an important part of the university, and especially the Bruner here, because it stands out from some of its peers, as I've seen, and it's a great program, and that's sort of what Lori did. It sort of got me going at Penn State with this Museum Experience Fund. So I don't want it's sort of catchy in a way.
Yeah.
But and I hope others
In a good way.
Yes, I hope others will emulate it. But as I follow it, I just it's really terrific, and I hope to continue to watch it grow.
Well, we certainly thank you for your support and actually for joining us today, and your continued support of all the museum endeavors. And Gracia, I think you have something to go curate, don't you?
I really do, yeah.
And we thank you, Gracia, for participating in this fellowship program, and we look forward to what your career holds. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to the University Museum staff who helped support this. And we are using the Student Innovation Center's podcast studio for the very first time, so give us your feedback. Thank you.